Sure, here's a detailed and creative fictionalized revenge story based on your Reddit story. My name is Harper Evans, and I am 29 years old living in Seattle, Washington. I used to work as a flight attendant, which means my schedule was all over the place. But I had to be sharp and ready for work no matter when my next flight was. My life was pretty routine for the most part. I worked hard and tried to take care of myself. I lived in a shared house with 5 other people, a mix of workers and students, and it was a 3-story house with only one kitchen that everyone had to share. It wasn't perfect, but it was affordable, and the location was good for my job. The house wasn't huge, but it was cozy and had character. I got along with most of my housemates. We all had our differences, but we managed to coexist peacefully for the most part. There was this one guy, though. His name was Liam, and he was in his mid-30s. He was also a flight attendant, but for a different airline. To put it bluntly, Liam was a mess. He drank almost every day and was one of those guys who thought he was the life of the party. The problem was that Liam loved to throw parties in the kitchen. Not just small get-togethers, but full-blown raging parties with his friends and random people he'd meet God knows where. These parties would go on till late into the night, sometimes even till morning. As a flight attendant, I often had early flights to catch, which meant I had to go to bed early and wake up around 3 or 4 a.m. The problem was that on the nights Liam decided to party, I couldn't sleep at all. The noise was unbearable, and it was impossible to get any rest. I tried to be understanding at first, I really did. I knew people like to have fun and everyone needs to unwind sometimes, but this was getting out of hand. It wasn't just the noise, though. Liam was also filthy. He didn't clean up after himself ever. His stuff was always scattered around the house, and when he cooked or used the kitchen utensils, he never cleaned them. The kitchen would be left in a disaster zone after he used it. I mean, I get it, sometimes you're tired and you forget to wash a dish or two, but Liam made it a habit. It was like he thought the rest of us were his personal maids, and if we called him out on it, he'd get aggressive. He had no respect for anyone else's space or time. One night I asked him to keep it down because I needed to sleep, and he told me to shut up and called me a bitch. That was the moment when things really started to go south between us. Living with Liam was like living in a nightmare. The kitchen was constantly a mess, and we had to clean up after him just to be able to use it. When he left for work, he didn't care what state he left the house in. He'd leave his dirty dishes in the sink, his trash everywhere, and just disappear for days. The tension in the house became unbearable. Everyone was stressed and annoyed, but Liam just didn't care. He was too busy being the center of attention and acting like he was some kind of superstar. Liam had this annoying habit of bragging about how great he was at everything. He would constantly talk about his job, his traveling, his so-called amazing cooking skills. One day he started bragging about this chicken soup he made, claiming it was the best dish he could cook. He even went as far as to say it was his signature dish. He left it in the fridge for his friends to try, and of course, he left the kitchen in a mess when he finished cooking. That day was the final straw for me. When Liam left the house, I decided to clean up after him like I always did. I scrubbed the counters, wiped down the stove, and swept the floor just so I could make myself some dinner. I was exhausted from work, and all I wanted was a quiet evening to myself. But just as I was about to start cooking, Liam walked back in with one of his friends. They had decided to give each other haircuts in the kitchen. Yes, you read that right. They set up clippers and started cutting hair right there in the kitchen. When they were done, they just left the kitchen covered in hair. There were clumps of hair on the counters, on the stove, on the table, everywhere. I couldn't take it anymore. I was so angry and frustrated. I didn't know what to do with myself. Then I looked over at the fridge and saw Liam's precious chicken soup sitting there. Something inside me just snapped. I took all the hair they had left behind and I seasoned his soup with it. I stirred it in and made sure it was well mixed. If Liam was going to treat my kitchen like his personal playground, then he was going to have to eat what he'd created. I didn't even care if I got caught. I was so done with him and his disrespect. I never got to see Liam's reaction when he found out what I'd done, but I could only imagine. He probably thought someone had played a prank on him, or maybe he just thought it was some kind of accident. But I knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. What really made it sweet, though, was what happened next. Liam had been causing so much trouble in the house that the police had been called multiple times because of his parties. The neighbors were sick of the noise, and the landlord was fed up with the constant complaints. I finally reached my breaking point and went to the landlord and told him I couldn't live with Liam anymore. I gave him an ultimatum, me or Liam. Of course, the landlord sided with me. Liam was told he had to leave the house within 2 months, and he even had to sign a restraining order to stay away from the property. Watching him sign that restraining order and hand over the house keys was the most satisfying moment of my life. He looked so smug and self-important even as he was being kicked out, but deep down I know, he knew he'd lost I stayed in that house for a few more years after Liam was gone. The place felt peaceful again, and I was finally able to enjoy the space without his constant drama. But even though I moved on with my life, I never forgot what happened with Liam. It taught me that sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands and stand up for yourself, even if it means getting a little creative with your revenge now. When people tell me stories about their awful roommates, I just smile and think to myself, oh, you have no idea. I've been through the trenches and I've come out on top. And every time I hear someone say the phrase, hair-raising experience, I can't help but laugh to myself because I know exactly what it means to take revenge to a whole new level. This story is a fictionalized account inspired by the Reddit post and is intended to be used as a creative interpretation of the events described.